Today, we're talking about remote work, something that many people dream of, but not everyone fully understands. When people hear remote work, they often imagine working from a laptop in a cozy cafe, choosing their own schedule, or traveling while earning money. And honestly, that image isn't completely wrong. Remote work can give you freedom and flexibility that traditional jobs don't. But at the same time, it also brings challenges that people rarely talk about.
Yeah, I agree. Remote work looks perfect from the outside, but once you live that lifestyle, you start to see both sides. I remember when I first started working remotely, I felt excited all the time. No commuting, no office politics, no fixed schedule. But after a few months, I realized that freedom also comes with responsibility and sometimes pressure.
Exactly. One of the biggest changes for me was time. When you work remotely, time feels very different. You don't have a clear start or end to your workday anymore. Sometimes I'd wake up, check my laptop, and suddenly it was evening. I hadn't really stopped working. I had just paused it many times.
That's such a common experience. Without clear boundaries, work can slowly take over your life. I used to reply to messages late at night, thinking it was no big deal. But over time, it became exhausting. I realized that remote work doesn't automatically give you work-life balance. You actually have to create it yourself.
And creating that balance isn't easy, especially when you work alone. Loneliness is another part people don't expect. When you work in an office, you talk to people naturally. Even small conversations help. But when you're remote, you might spend hours without speaking to anyone.
True. Some days feel very quiet. At first, I enjoyed the silence, but later I noticed that I missed human interaction. That's when I started working from cafes or co-working spaces. Being around people, even strangers, helped me feel more connected.
Remote work also changes how you see productivity. In an office, being busy often looks productive, but remotely, nobody sees you working. Only results matter. That can be motivating, but it can also be stressful. You might feel pressure to always prove that you're doing enough.
Yes, especially when you're working across time zones. Sometimes you feel like you need to be available all the time. That's when burnout becomes real. I learned that being productive doesn't mean being online 24/7. It means working smart and knowing when to rest.
Another interesting part is how remote work affects travel. Many people choose remote jobs because they want to travel more, and that part can be amazing, working from a new city, experiencing different cultures. But traveling while working isn't always easy.
Definitely. People think you're always on vacation, but in reality, you still have deadlines. Bad Wi-Fi, different time zones, or feeling tired from moving around can make work harder. Sometimes you're in a beautiful place, but you're stuck inside finishing tasks.
And yet, despite all the difficulties, many people still choose remote work. I think it's because it gives a sense of control. You feel more responsible for your own life and choices. You're not just following a system, you're building one that works for you.
I agree. Remote work teaches you discipline, self-awareness, and independence. It forces you to understand how you work best. Some people realize they need structure. Others realize they need flexibility. It's a process of learning about yourself.
For me, remote work made my life better in many ways, but also harder in others, and I think that's the most honest way to describe it. It's not a perfect lifestyle, and it's not for everyone. But if you're willing to face the challenges and adapt, it can be very rewarding.
Exactly. Remote work isn't a dream or a nightmare. It's just a different way of working. And like anything else, it depends on how you manage it.
So if you're thinking about switching to remote work, don't just look at the highlights. Think about your habits, your needs, and your personality. Freedom is powerful, but only if you know how to handle it.
And remember, it's okay to change your mind. Remote work isn't a final decision. It's an experience. You can try it, learn from it, and adjust along the way.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is financial pressure. A lot of people think remote work automatically means freedom and stability, but that's not always true. Especially for freelancers or people working contract-based jobs, income can change from month to month. That uncertainty can be stressful even if you love the flexibility.
That's a really important point. When I started working remotely, I underestimated how much mental energy financial uncertainty takes. In an office job, you usually know exactly how much you'll earn every month. With remote work, especially online work, you constantly think about the next project, the next client, or whether this income will last.
And that pressure can quietly push you to overwork. You might say yes to projects you don't really want or work late nights because you're afraid of losing opportunities. At some point, freedom turns into fear. Fear of slowing down, fear of being replaced, fear of not earning enough.
Exactly. That's why learning when to say no becomes a survival skill. I didn't realize this early on. I thought working more always meant earning more. But after burning out once, I understood that sustainability matters more than short-term hustle.
Remote work also changes how you measure success. In traditional jobs, success often looks clear: promotions, titles, performance reviews. But remotely, success feels more personal and sometimes confusing. You have to define it yourself.
Yeah, and that can be uncomfortable. Some days you wonder, am I doing enough? Or am I moving forward? Without external validation, you rely more on internal motivation. That's empowering, but also challenging if you're not used to it.
I think this is where self-discipline and self-awareness really matter. Remote work forces you to face your habits. If you procrastinate, you'll see it clearly. If you avoid rest, your body will remind you. There's nowhere to hide behind busy office culture.
That's so true. And at the same time, remote work gives you the chance to redesign your lifestyle. You can choose when you're most productive, build routines that fit your energy, and even redesign your environment to support your focus.
For me, travel played a big role in that redesign. Working remotely allowed me to experience new cities and cultures while still working. But I also learned that constant movement isn't always healthy. Sometimes staying in one place gives you more peace and better focus.
I had the same experience. Traveling sounds exciting, but moving too often can make you feel ungrounded. You're always adjusting. New time zones, new routines, new environments. At some point, stability becomes just as valuable as freedom.
And that's something people don't talk about enough. Remote work isn't about escaping responsibility. It's about choosing a different kind of responsibility. You're responsible for your time, your income, your mental health, and your boundaries.
Exactly. No manager will tell you when to stop. No office rules will protect your personal time. You have to do that yourself. And that's why remote work can either improve your life or slowly drain you, depending on how you manage it.
I think the biggest lesson for me was learning balance, not just between work and life, but between ambition and rest. Remote work gave me space to listen to myself more, but only after I stopped trying to be productive all the time.
Same here. Once I stopped seeing rest as laziness, everything changed. I became more focused, more creative, and actually more productive. Remote work taught me that rest isn't a reward. It's a requirement.
So maybe the real question isn't whether remote work is good or bad. It's whether we're ready to handle the freedom it gives us. Because freedom without awareness can feel overwhelming.
And freedom with intention can be incredibly powerful. Remote work isn't a shortcut to a better life. It's a tool. And like any tool, it depends on how you use it.
If you're listening and considering remote work, take time to reflect. Ask yourself what kind of structure you need, how you handle uncertainty, and what balance really means to you.
And remember, there's no perfect setup. Some people mix remote and office work. Some go fully remote. Some try it and go back. All of that is okay.
Because in the end, remote work isn't about following a trend. It's about designing a life that feels sustainable for you.
And that design can change over time, just like you do.
One thing I also want to mention is that remote work changes how you measure success. Before, success felt very external: promotions, titles, office recognition. But when you work remotely, success becomes more personal. It's about whether your day feels meaningful, whether you still have energy after work, and whether your life feels balanced, not just busy.
That's a really good point. I noticed that too. When no one is watching over your shoulder, you start asking different questions. Am I actually growing? Am I learning something new? Am I taking care of myself? Or just chasing tasks? Remote work forces you to reflect more, and sometimes that reflection can be uncomfortable.
Yes, especially when motivation drops. In an office, the environment pushes you to keep going, but remotely, motivation has to come from inside. Some days you feel inspired and productive. Other days you feel stuck, distracted, or tired, and there's no manager or coworker to pull you out of that mood.
That's when routines become really important. I used to think routines were boring, but now I see them as support systems. Simple things like starting work at the same time, taking lunch breaks away from the screen, or ending the day with a short walk help separate work from life.
I agree. Without those small habits, days can blur together. Monday feels like Sunday, and suddenly weeks pass without clear memories. Remote work gives freedom, but structure is what keeps that freedom healthy.
Another thing people don't talk about much is financial pressure. Remote work often comes with unstable income, especially for freelancers. Some months are great, others are stressful. That uncertainty can affect your mental health more than you expect.
That's so true. When income isn't fixed, you're always planning ahead. You think about savings, future projects, and what happens if work slows down. It teaches you responsibility, but it also creates anxiety if you're not prepared.
But at the same time, it builds resilience. You learn to adapt, to look for opportunities, and to trust yourself more. I think that's one of the biggest lessons remote work gives. Confidence built from experience, not comfort.
Looking back, I don't regret choosing remote work. It pushed me to understand myself better, how I work, how I rest, and what I actually value in life. It wasn't easy, but it was honest.
And that honesty matters. Remote work shows you both your strengths and your weaknesses. It's not about escaping work. It's about changing your relationship with it.
So if you're listening and thinking about remote work, remember this: it's not a shortcut to an easy life. It's a different path, with its own struggles and rewards.
Exactly. Take your time. Be realistic. And don't compare your journey to what you see online. Everyone's remote work experience looks different.
And if you're already working remotely, we hope this episode made you feel a little less alone.
Yeah, you're definitely not the only one figuring things out day by day.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode.
We really appreciate you spending your time with us.
If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow the podcast and share it with someone who might need it.
We'll be back soon with more honest conversations about work, life, and everything in between.
Until then, take care of yourself.
And we'll see you in the next episode.